all of you vaingloriously wonderful people. The Glitchwalkers expansion for Astroneer has been out for a couple of weeks, so I thought it'd be good to take a look at what players are saying, combine that with my own thoughts, and compile a list of the top 5 best and top 5 worst things about the DLC. As I was writing this, longtime channel viewer Devlin Does Things dropped an absolute master's class in how to provide constructive criticism of the game into the comments of my full walkthrough guide. What he wrote was far better than a lot of what I had prepared, so I will be quoting him a few times throughout this video. Be sure to check out my full walkthrough guide and read his entire comment, and also check out his YouTube channel to watch him take on a parkour challenge, or walk up a mountain on a rainy, windy day, or even spend a night sleeping in a tree. So let's jump into it. These are the 5 worst and 5 best things about Astroneer Glitchwalkers. Blitz just does not feel present as an adversary. I agree with Devlin when he wrote, when characters in the present tense communicate exclusively through text on a screen, it is a lot less interesting. Glitchwalkers has only served to underscore that for me. Blitz just feels disconnected from what is going on in Glitchwalkers. I had hoped we would see them pop into the world from time to time as we made our way through the expansion gameplay. Think something similar to how Eva appears in Awakening. I don't think we would have needed full-on cutscenes for Blitz throughout, but having them appear at key points during the mission, maybe with a menacing laugh to taunt us, or a scream of anger to show their rage, this would have really made it feel as though there were an actual physical antagonist working against us. Instead, Blitz's physical absence makes it difficult for me to see them as anything other than some generic villain making some idle threats. I think it all boils down to the character simply isn't all that well written, which is a common problem in Astroneer. As Devlin wrote, the writing isn't fabulous, and it's really difficult to get attached to the characters. Instead of feeling like a true adversary who has created an incredibly dangerous situation, Blitz feels like an annoying person just chirping away in the corner. I'm surprised they didn't ask to speak to my manager. Frank. Look, this guy is just a legend. If you disagree, you are just entirely, demonstrably, factually wrong, though you are still entitled to your own opinion. It may seem like I'm contradicting myself here since I just said it is difficult to feel a connection to most of Astroneer's characters, but stick with me. Frank is, and has been, an incredibly well-written character. We've been hearing from him for the entire year leading up to Glitchwalkers through bits of lore and data circuits. And I feel he is the best written character in all of Astroneer. Even though it is just text, Frank's personality shines through. And that means I really felt a connection to him. So much so that when we lose communication with him and Blitz says Frank's instance of the training simulation has been deleted, I actually felt a tinge of sorrow. The world wasn't going to be the same without old Frankie. But the way he reappears toward the end game is just magnificent, and I feel aligns perfectly with how his character has been presented to date. There is not all that much happening in the base game. Sure, there are a handful of missions, but let's be honest about those. Almost all of them boil down to reading some text on a small control panel, and that, to me, is not at all engaging. But there are storms again, I hear you exclaim. Yeah, we have storms, but they are practically useless in the base game as they do not really serve much of a purpose here. Storm data in the base game can be used to complete one mission, and then it provides research bytes. But let's be honest with ourselves here. Are we really going to keep running back to storms with a ruby to obtain some storm data as a viable means of getting research bytes? Of course not. They do not provide enough bytes per data nugget. And it's not like you can automate storm data research. The storms themselves relocate, and the hotspots within the storms are always moving around. That makes setting up any type of automated storm databyte farm incredibly difficult, if not impossible. Systemera really kept hyping up how the base game would see new gameplay with the expansion. And sure, there is a very minuscule amount, but nothing near what I was expecting based on how they kept hyping it up. I feel there was a very large missed opportunity to provide a new vehicle or some new platforms and storage options, or maybe even a couple of new shelter designs or even an all new power producer. You know, something we could actually use in the base game that would bring something fresh and new. The potential for some truly impressive automation on Aeoluz is massive. Think about it. This is the first time where every natural and atmospheric resource has been available in one place. Before, you had to move resources from planet to planet. Now, you can automate quite literally every single resource right on Aeoluz. And it gets better because due to the size of Aeolus and the distance between the different types of natural resources, there is potential to deploy trains and rails in a way the base game planets simply do not truly offer. You could have trains bringing in resources from auto extractors half a planet away and processing those all in one space, and even being routed to printers to create practically anything 100% automated. I know several players who love to automate the production of all the things just because they can. So Aeolus should be the ideal location for doing so. Okay, so number 3 is simultaneously a good and a bad thing for Glitchwalkers. You might think that this is a bit of cognitive dissonance here, but hear me out. I think you'll see both things can be true. Nothing from our previous adventures in the base game has any impact on the expansion whatsoever. And on the flip side, there is zero continuity from the expansion back into the base game. I am not going to go into examples of how this could be improved, but the problem boils down to the overall lack of connection between the two saves. In case you missed this detail in the expansion gameplay, Blitz is not only threatening the instance of the training simulation where Glitchwalkers takes place, they are threatening to delete everything and everyone from all instances of the training simulation. In Awakening, we learned that our base game adventure is one such instance of the simulation. Yet, I can head to Aeolus and make some progress there, then return to my base game save and continue on automating 2000 nanocarbon alloy with zero evidence of the grave danger all Astroneers face due to Blitz's hack. Sure, the storms are on each planet, but they do not really present us with any sense of urgency to take action to stop Blitz. To me, this lack of continuity between the base game and the expansion is problematic and undermines the narrative of everything and everyone being at risk of simply ceasing to exist. And when we do defeat Blitz and decide to return back to our base game saves, there is nothing there to indicate what we have accomplished. At the very least, there should be some mission reward we can claim in the base game once we have completed the expansion. Maybe all 4 of Blitz's personal logs could be claimed as a little trophy. I mean, look, I've used a mod to spawn them in, and my base game save is working just fine. So it's not like they're going to break something. As a good feature, this means we are experiencing Aeolus and the story that takes place there as an entirely new adventure. Because there is not a fundamental connection between the base game and the expansion, that means we cannot bring bytes or resources or anything else that would have an impact on the gameplay in the expansion. This gives us the opportunity to take in the world around us, learning where the best resource deposits are, where to find research, and simply enjoy exploring an entirely new planet. Going hand in hand, this also prevents us from immediately building out a large rover with a drill and a paver and an RTG, and just bulldozing our way through everything in a quarter of the time that it takes to otherwise make our way through the entire gameplay loop. In my opinion, being able to do that would mean we would miss out on experiencing things on this new planet and would rob us of that sense of exploration and discovery that comes with a slower pace. Through all of this, our perspective shifts a bit, and there are things in the game that we may have neglected for quite some time that we suddenly discover are useful in Glitchwalkers. Devlin wrote that he used a medium rover for the first time in about a year. For me, it had been several years. I simply never found a use for it in the base game. But in the expansion, that medium rover was the exact vehicle I needed at the moment, and it was restored in the research catalog at the exact moment it was needed. And this shifted perspective carries through in many ways. I never really felt like there was a need to build out a huge base to make my way through Glitchwalkers. I never felt like I needed to amass a huge quantity of resources. Most of the things I felt like I need to do in a base game save were simply not pressing needs in Glitchwalkers, and I appreciated that fresh view on things. So this lack of connection between the base game and the expansion pushes us to experience Glitchwalkers as an entirely new adventure. While the bones of what makes Astroneer a great game are still there, Glitchwalkers seeks to do something fresh and new. Instead of something that encourages a great deal of industrial expansion to gather tons of resources and build out huge megabases, it pushes us to take part in a narrative and experience all those familiar items in an entirely new way. The expansion seems to forget what made Astroneer such a beloved game for so many people. Before missions appeared, much of Astroneer offered a great deal of freedom while presenting something of a mystery. When you discovered your first gateway chamber, you had no idea what it was, where it came from, or what you were supposed to do with it. The research catalog was full of stuff that seemed like it might be cool, but you had to engage in some trial and error to figure out what it was all for and how to best use it all together. With no set objective to guide you, the worlds were yours to do with as you please. You could explore, you could build bases, you could stuff 10,000 hydrogen into a mountain and then blow it up. You could cut an entire moon in half. There were buggy racetracks to build, terrain sculptures to be made, zebra marbles to find, and tons of potential limited only by our imaginations. In my opinion, missions ruined a substantial portion of the sense of freedom and discovery that so many Astroneers came to love. I understand there was not an insignificant number of players who never made much progress in Astroneer because they just weren't sure what to do. But missions went too far in the other direction, hand-holding your way through the adventure and explaining nearly every little thing along the way. I wonder how many newer Astroneers never get to experience the joy of blowing up mountains or finding as many zebra balls as possible because they feel the missions are really the only thing there is to do. And in Glitchwalkers, I feel this problem has only gotten worse because everything we do is driven completely by the objectives in the missions. Sure, you can build out some really cool automation and do some exploration and countless other things, but you have to complete a bunch of missions in a very specific order, doing very specific things before you can even think about doing all of those countless other things. My point is this: a lot of freedom and sandbox goodness of Astroneer is either missing entirely or just drowned out by the missions. Maybe System Era wants Astroneer to become a narrative-driven adventure. Okay, fine. But make a different game and do that game as a narrative. I would much rather have Glitchwalkers be the last narrative update we see in Astroneer for a while. Give me 10 new platforms and storages, a new large battery, and some spaceports to plop down. I will find hundreds of ways to use those. But in Glitchwalkers, I can really only play one way thanks to being locked in by missions. As Devlin wrote, Systemera seems to be looking to make Astroneer more of a linear adventure game than an open sandbox. At least in the base game, you can completely ignore the missions if you wish, and still manage to complete the game. In Glitchwalkers, it might be possible to stumble upon the correct order of events and still complete the story without ever opening the mission log, but I doubt it. And even if it is, the way the missions kick off from the moment you make landfall still feel like they are limiting player freedom quite a bit. For a long time, a very vocal group of players clamored for the return of storms. I never understood why, because I found the storms of early access days to be a pointless nuisance. But when I encountered them for the first time on Aeoluz, I was quite happy with their return. I absolutely love the overall design of them. They look truly menacing. And I dig that as you approach a storm, your visibility becomes more and more limited. I think the firewall surrounding each storm is not only a very cool gameplay mechanic, but it also looks incredible. I'm glad the Eye of the Storm is a hack-free zone, giving us multiple places that we can retreat to before the hack completes and we begin to suffocate. And most of all, I really appreciate that the storms were brought back with a purpose instead of being the old thing that just randomly interrupted your gameplay. Now, they are integral to the gameplay of the expansion itself, even if they are fairly pointless in the base game. Quoting Devlin again, the storm system does open up new possibilities, like how the storm's danger, combined with the sheer size of the planet, makes items like the field shelter way more useful as a portable respawn point you can park right outside a storm. It's really cool that Systemera was able to bring back something people had been requesting for years, but in a way that was thoughtful and meaningful. Glitchwalkers is supposed to be about us racing against an antagonist bent on the pure evil desire to wipe out everything and everyone in the Astroneer training program. Those should feel like very high stakes, but they don't. Devlin wrote of the moment where he returned to the surface before obtaining the final counter-hack keys near the end of the story. As he put it, this was supposed to be a dramatic, edge-of-my-seat climax, and yet I can take a break for 45 minutes and nothing happens because there are no stakes in Astroneer. Sure, if you drive your tractor too deep into a storm, you may be hacked and suffocate, returning back to the glitch shelter with your tractor now stranded half a planet away. Those aren't the stakes I am talking about, though. I am talking about the stakes of what happens if we fail to stop Blitz. The reality is, there are none, because you cannot actually fail. If you fail to find the correct placement of the gateway shards, the game waits patiently for you to eventually figure it out. If, while in the middle of gathering storm data to ultimately solve the final gateway, you decide you'd rather go find out if the canyons extend all the way around the circumference of the planet, go for it. Blitz will wait. I guess they have some wordles to catch up on. And if you somehow manage to suffocate a dozen times while trying to obtain the counter-hack keys in the core, no worries, there's a convenient shelter nearby, and you can just try again. There is no moment in Glitchwalkers where it feels that you must act with a sense of urgency, or else Blitz will emerge victorious. Aeoluz is, as Devlin wrote, stunning. If there is one element of Glitchwalkers that deserves universal praise, it is the planet itself. It is so clearly, thoughtfully and carefully put together that it sort of makes all the other existing planets pale in comparison. Where most regions on the existing planets casually blend from one into another, the regions on Aeolus often stand in stark contrast to one another. Not only do the color palettes change abruptly, but so do the decorators, resources, hazards, and the terrain itself. While this can be jarring, it also allows each region to introduce an entirely brand new thing to explore and investigate and marvel at. The storm peaks have a glitched effect moving throughout everything. The canyon walls soar majestically over the canyon floor. The enormous crystals of the first cavern are not only gorgeous to look at, but they emit a wonderful, magical sound. And the weird trees of the second cavern and the luminescence under their canopies is sheer beauty. Aeoluz is a true work of art. Not only that, and again quoting Devlin here, the terrain actually makes for really interesting and challenging gameplay. You go from a fairly simple starting region in the Boolean Fields to an immediate challenge of the Alpha Storm Peaks and its varying elevations. And if those elevation changes weren't enough, you eventually encounter the canyons and have to stop and take a beat to formulate a plan to reach the canyon floor. The subsequent storm peaks each ramp up the difficulty as well. And then there are the two massive caves. If you do not make good use of the large purple pillars, just getting down to the floor of those caves can be a massive undertaking. Then you wind up in the core with its multiple levels of Swiss cheese to descend through to reach the action. It all keeps you on your toes and presents a challenge unlike the regions of any other planet in Astroneer. In my opinion, Aeolus is the shining star of Glitchwalkers. And there you have it, the 5 worst and 5 best things about Astroneer Glitchwalkers, at least in my opinion. Big thanks to Devlin for letting me quote his comment in this video. But now, it's your turn. What are your least or most favorite things about this expansion? Head down to the comments and tell me all about it. Or even better, drop by the Astroneer channel on the Vainglorious Discord and talk to other fans of the game about your favorites. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit the like button and maybe even get subscribed. I'm currently doing a limited run playthrough of Glitchwalkers, and I also feature a lot of Astroneer content on my channel, from update news and reviews, limited time events, and even Astroneer Academy, which is the most comprehensive guide to Astroneer in existence. Plus, I feature a variety of other great games. If you get subscribed, you won't miss any of it. And with that, until next time, I'm Brandon, reminding you to stay vainglorious.